is Keys to the Shop, Founder Friday edition. Today we're talking with Jim Sanders of Heartwood Coffee Roasters. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DiFirio. I'm your host for the show. I'm really glad to have you here today, and I would encourage you to subscribe to Keys to the Shop. Just hit subscribe wherever you get these podcasts, and also share this show with your team. It would really mean a lot if you would do that to spread the word. It's a big world out there. There's a lot of coffee shops and coffee professionals that don't have access to these conversations, and it's because they don't know Keys to the Shop exists. And you are integral to that process of helping people become aware. So share as much as you can. Thank you so much for doing that. If you are wanting to take your business to the next level, if you're an existing operator who wants to go from good to great with your people, with your operations, with your quality, if you are just starting in the coffee industry and want to make sure that you're making the right steps, avoiding needless mistakes, and building foundations for the future of your business, Keys to the Shop Consulting can help you achieve these things and more. I would really love to talk with you about what that might look like for your situation. All you need to do to set up a free discovery call is email me, chris@keystotheshop.com. We'll have a conversation about what's going on with you and your business and how Keys to the Shop might be able to help you. Again, that email for Keys to the Shop Consulting, chris@keystotheshop.com. Now, today's Founder Friday episode is brought to you by Prima Coffee. Prima Coffee is one of the world's best specialty coffee equipment suppliers because they not only curate the best equipment from all over the world, but they work with you to make sure that you're getting the right equipment for your needs. And it's really important to work with somebody dedicated to your success, because paying for equipment can be one of the scarier parts of expanding your business, upgrading your business, or just starting the business. And you get incredible confidence working with the folks over at Prima Coffee. Now, if you are a Keys to the Shop listener, which you are right now, you get 5% off your order when you use the code KEYS5 at checkout. That's KEYS and the number 5. When you go to prima-coffee.com/keys, use the code KEYS5 and get 5% off your entire order. Super generous offer. And again, if you're in the market for commercial coffee equipment and you want to work with the best, you definitely need to be working with Prima Coffee. Today's episode is also brought to you by the Barista Series from Pacific, the world's leader in plant-based performance beverages, for a very good reason, and that is because they have formulated these beverages, no matter what you choose from their extensive lineup, to stand up to the heat from steaming, produce amazing texture for latte art on every drink, and also keep the balance of the beverage focused on coffee. And it truly is a performance beverage made for and tested by the world's best baristas, so it performs on your bar every time. I highly recommend you check them out over at pacificfoodservice.com. Get this in your store and try it for yourself. If you want to serve your customers the best and offer them an amazing plant-based beverage experience, then you need to be serving them the Barista Series from Pacific. Okay, everybody. Well, today is Founder Friday, and I'm excited to share with you a conversation with somebody who has quite a story, and it is truly impressive how his business was built, the kind of dedication that it took to get it off the ground so that he could actually quit his career and do the coffee shop and roasting full time. Today we're talking with Jim Sanders, who is the founder, owner, and leader of Heartwood Coffee Roasters, which is a specialty coffee roasting company that's based out of Northeast Ohio. Jim started Heartwood in 2014 while he was maintaining a full-time plumbing career and had the goal of bringing better coffee to the region with a greater sense of hospitality. Heartwood now has 2 cafes and continues to grow every year, and Jim has managed to transition into running the cafes and roastery full-time. And it was no easy feat, of course. If you are maintaining a full-time plumbing career while starting a coffee business, you can imagine there are some ups and downs and challenges. But as you'll hear in the story today from Jim, his dedication to his community, to just making this work and getting the right people on board was all so key to making Heartwood what it is. So you're going to get to hear about the genesis of his love for coffee, how he started into the world of coffee roasting while working as a plumber, and then venturing into retail, all still while maintaining his full-time career, and all the milestones in the business that forced him to grow as the business grew and eventually transitioned to full-time. I really love the way that Jim talks about his business and his people. It's very warm and grounded, very heartfelt, appropriate to Heartwood Coffee Roasters, and the perfect kind of interview to celebrate with the day after Thanksgiving. Jim obviously has a lot to be thankful for, and this interview kind of reminds us of how we can be thankful for the good people in our lives as well. So with that said, let's get right to the interview. Here now is my conversation with the founder of Heartwood Coffee Roasters, Jim Sanders. Well, hello, Jim, and welcome to Keys to the Shop. How are you today?
I'm doing really good. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you having me on. It's a real honor.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. There is a lot going on in Ohio at Heartwood. And y'all are, we were talking before recording, and y'all are fairly busy, which is a real blessing to have in these times, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Every day, I walk into the shops and there's a line, or there's people flooding in, or people, are working. And it's just like, my goodness, where are these people coming from? And it's such like you said, it's such a blessing to have, to be thriving right now. It's really, really cool. We don't take it for granted at all.
Well, you've built something really wonderful there, and your community is highly supportive of your business, obviously, just from the business itself, but also the reviews, and seems like a happy place to be. So this is a new profession for you, though. You came from a background of the trades in plumbing.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, at first, how did you as a plumber get introduced to specialty coffee and then have it kind of overtake your interest, or how you had settled into your profession of plumbing?
Sure. Yeah. It's a it seems like a weird path to go from working in the trades, being a plumber, and then all of a sudden you're roasting coffee and you're opening up coffee shops. It doesn't seem like a natural progression, but I spent about 12 years plumbing after I got out of college. I really just couldn't find a job, and I kind of fell into it. But once I got into it, it was a really, really good job. But I really just kind of got to the point where I was never going to be, I was never going to move up any farther than I kind of where I was at. And so I was always looking for that next thing. I always had it in my mind that I would open my own business doing something. And I don't know, there's 100 things that I tried, but I started to learn about coffee, and I started to learn about coffee roasting, and the more I learned about it, it was a rabbit hole, and that really kind of got me into the industry.
So that was something you had got into simply because you were a coffee drinker, and somewhere along the way, somebody was like, hey, there's better coffee?
Yeah. I thought I was a coffee, nerd. I thought that I was sort of like an aficionado, and I would come home at night and I'd make coffee, and that was like my thing. And I'd hang out at the local coffee shop, and I don't know. I guess it was a part of my identity, but oddly enough, I was doing some work at somebody's house, some plumbing work, and they asked me if I wanted a cup of coffee, and I, usually I would say no, just because I felt weird asking people to make me coffee while I'm in their house. And this guy was pretty insistent about it, and he's like, I'm kind of like really into it, and I'm like, yeah, me too. That's awesome. And so he comes down and he brewed me an AeroPress of a coffee that was roasted by a local coffee roaster. And I had never heard of any of that before. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, the coffee I'm brewing at home is not this. So whatever, excellence I claim here in the coffee world, I'm very, very wrong. And he really opened up my eyes to something new. So I'm like, AeroPress, whoa, okay, I need to get one of these. And local roaster, what? I don't even know what that is. And it was really one of the first ones in our areas. And I went out of my way to go seek this place out and get coffee for myself. And like I said, it kind of turned into a rabbit hole. He opened my eyes, and you learn the AeroPress, and all of a sudden there's pour over, and then all of a sudden there's this and there's that, and yeah, before you know it, I've got a science lab in my kitchen, and I've got my wife looking at me
Yeah.
like I've lost my mind, which is probably a similar story for a lot of people who've gotten into coffee.
Oh, I'm sure everybody's partner or significant other is just kind of either into it or tolerating it or somewhere in the purgatorial middle.
Agreed.
So when you, I mean, you got into it just like this guy who gave you your sort of aha moment for coffee. And this guy didn't have a coffee shop. He was into it.
Right.
Now you're into coffee. You don't have a coffee shop. So you could have just stayed like that. And so did this just sort of immediately seem to you like a way to open your own business? And why did that just kind of click for you that this was something that you could do? How did that happen?
Sure. You know, I don't know. Did it click? It probably didn't click, but it certainly set a you know, the spark that was starting to set a fire. And over the course of time, as I learned more about coffee, I learned about roasting, and I had never heard about roasting. I don't even know that I considered that roasting was something that happened. You know, for all I know, that's just how the coffee came. And and so you learn about roasting, and yeah, you mentioned a shop. Like, oh my gosh, to open a shop would have been amazing. But you know, at this point, I'm you know, in my 30s. I'm married. I've got 2 kids at the time. I've got a job and a house and the whole thing. I've got responsibilities. Like, I'm not who I was 10 years prior, where I had nothing, you know? And so I had a lot of responsibilities. So to go open a coffee shop was too big of a risk. That would have been a huge thing to do, and probably pretty foolish. But the more I learned about roasting, I'm like, oh man, this is something I literally could do in my garage. And, yeah, so I kind of pursued it, and I started learning about it. And, you know, like, craft breweries are such a big deal. And I could kind of see that, oh, wow, like, you know, I love that vibe. I love that feel. And you start to learn about really great, specialty coffee shops in much bigger cities. And I'm looking around and I'm saying, there's nothing like that around where I'm at. And we're east of Cleveland, but really the whole Cleveland area really didn't have a specialty coffee scene at all. And it just occurred to me that if this is a big thing in bigger cities, it's bound to be a big thing here one day. And so it gave me some validation. I thought it was a pretty good hypothesis, and enough so that I went on eBay, and you know, after probably a year of searching, I'm sure, and convincing my wife that I was actually going to do this, bought a really good roaster from a guy in Massachusetts, and my brother-in-law made a 24-hour round trip and drove to Massachusetts and threw it in the back of the truck and came back, and I was kind of off to the races at that point.
Okay, so that was a bit larger than some countertop unit.
Yeah, it was a 3-kilo Diedrich. You know, I had sort of considered, oh man, like, okay, there's these rotisserie units that you could put in a grill, and I had started roasting coffee in like a wok on a turkey fryer, making a mess in my backyard.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's, again, probably a familiar story for anybody who's gotten into roasting. And for me, you know, I was building a family, and I was trying to look for a way to make some money. And I felt like, man, I'm smarter than this. And I really was dedicated to the idea that I need to start a business in some capacity, doing something, in order to, I don't know, plan for my future, really. Like, I felt like I was kind of going nowhere. And so, you know, I'm like, well, I'm not going to buy a countertop unit because I'm not really going to learn anything about roasting if I do that. So I bought a really old Diedrich. I don't know if it was really old. It was at least it was probably, I don't know, probably 10 years old. And it was small, an IR3, but it's still a lot of coffee to roast for somebody who wasn't selling anything. And, yeah, it was really important for me to kind of get the real deal roaster and not get something that went into my grill, because I felt like I wasn't going to learn anything, and it wasn't going to propel me forward, and it was just going to be a hobby, not something that was going to propel me into a business.
Okay, and that was your goal. Your goal was to do a business with this.
Right.
And so and you had decided up front and you had told your wife that this is what I'm going to do long term. So I'm sure that
Mm-hmm.
that helped you with the initial ups and downs of learning. I mean, the investment you have to make into practicing roasting is not a small investment.
Right.
At what point did you start to go from roasting and learning to roasting and selling?
So pretty quickly. And the reason is because on an IR3, you're only going to get, that's a 3 kilo. So, maybe you're getting 5 pounds out of a batch or something.
Mhm.
I would go down and roast one batch, and end up with 5 pounds, and I could sell whatever, 5 bags of coffee, or I would drink 2 and give one away and sell 2. But like we started an Instagram and started a website, and basically friends and family were starting to buy right away. And so, I mean, that means nothing. We weren't making any money, but we weren't throwing coffee away either. Plenty people were drinking the coffee that we were roasting and stuff like that. So yeah, it was definitely a plan to be a business from the beginning. I didn't need another hobby. I had enough things that I had tried. I was either going to really go full force into this, or I wasn't going to do it.
Okay, so in the pursuit of, sorry, friends and family. I mean, we love friends and family, but I would say in pursuit of legitimate like customers, clients, and things like that. How did you grow that part of the business purposefully without just simply, was it all referral, or did you go out there and market yourself and build a client base that way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. So really probably 2 ways. One is that I think we kind of figured, hey, we could probably do an online business with this. And I should mention that when I started, I had a co-founder, and he's no longer with the company, but he was a huge part of it in, the first couple of years. And he was a photographer. He was great with social media, and he really built a great Instagram presence. And somehow, I don't even understand it today, really got some attention out there. And I mean, we started a subscription program because that's what every roaster I think starts with. And we had a nice website where we could do retail bags, and we were just pushing it out, and we were sending free bags of coffee to some versions of, bloggers or what do you call them? Influencers.
Yeah.
Right. And stuff like that. And so people would post on their, we'd give them a free bag of coffee, and they'd post, and we'd get maybe an order or something. And so we started to get to the point where, maybe we were getting 30 orders a week or something. And it probably took a while. So that was a big thing. And we did a lot of stuff online, and that really grew. I remember we were shipping coffee to Alaska. I remember we were shipping coffee to like California. I'm like, why are you buying our coffee? It's funny because, you just don't understand where these people come from, but I guess that's the power of social media and of the internet. And so we did a great job marketing that way, but that wasn't we kind of saw early on that we weren't going to get very far. We weren't going to compete with a lot of already established roasters out there. We were just some, new company in my garage, roasting coffee and stuff like that. So we said, let's get out there and let people know that we exist. And so we started the farmers market route. Again, probably a typical story, but we just found our local farmers market. They let us have a stand. They actually kind of fought with us, and I don't know why, but they eventually conceded and let us set up a stand there. And that was awesome. That started to actually put some money, into the business. And so the first year we did every Saturday, and the second year we like triple booked ourselves, and we had 3 farmers markets in the area. And my sister was helping, and my family and my wife and everybody was helping. My in-laws were helping. They would all run farmers market, stands around the area and stuff like that. And it really was cool because, you can't sell coffee in an ad. I feel like you sell it by letting somebody enjoy it and experience it and drinking it, because that's where they go, oh my goodness, this is way different than anything that I've ever had before. I can taste that it's different. I can taste that it's better. And more times than not, that was the experience. And so all of a sudden we have regulars coming to these farmers markets, buying a bag of coffee, buying a cup that we were brewing there on site. And it was really cool, because that started the sort of like social aspect of who we were. Like, we got to know our community. We got to know customers. We were serving customers. And really they were like mini cafes, and it was starting to show us that, hey, maybe this is something we could do on a bigger scale.
And hence a cafe, yeah. Just
Yeah.
so you obviously are. I guess the next step would be putting a brick and mortar in place of, or in addition to, the farmers markets.
Mhm.
And I want you to go there and talk about that. But at the same time, there's something that we haven't talked about, which is you still were a plumber.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
so how are you managing your time between the two things? And during this time of growth after the farmers market, was this the time where you started to say, I need to do less of this and more of the coffee?
In my heart, yeah. I mean, I was ready to go at any time, but this what I've told you so far was probably the first 2 years or so of the company, and before you know it, we had two more babies, and so
Mm.
now I've got four kids, and and kind of all the responsibilities that I ever had before, and so yeah, I would have loved to have done that, but I I really wasn't in a position where I wasn't going to put my family at a disadvantage so I could go chase a dream and and probably not make any money for a long time, and in the first probably 4 years, I would say 3.5 to 4 years, I didn't take a dime from the company. I wasn't making any money. So I really hadn't proved anything for a long, long time. So yeah, in my heart, oh my gosh, I was so ready. But in real life, it was like living a double life. I would, wake up at 6 o'clock and go, and go be a plumber. And I would come home at 6 or 7 o'clock at night, have dinner with the family, turn around, go back out to the garage, and I would roast. I'd have another 8 hour day ahead of me, and I would roast. And then maybe the next day was another roast day, and the next day was prepping for a market or whatever it was, and maybe there was meetings or computer works on another day, and then Saturday all day I'm running around doing markets. So it was my family probably sacrificed a lot, and I have an unbelievable wife who's so good, so supportive, and kind of put up with it because I think she could see that this might be something. And so it I didn't leave plumbing until we had our second cafe open. So there
Oh,
was
wow.
a lot of hard work, a lot of long hours
Mm.
before I really was able to make that happen.
You were a plumber working for a plumbing company, right?
Yes. Yep.
And so up until this point, you had not really had, or maybe I'm wrong about this, but
Mhm.
leading other people. Now that your business has the farmers market and even the fact that you had to open a cafe and then wait till the second one to be full time, there's this transition from being an employee to being an owner who also manages other people.
Sure.
Was that something that you kind of got the hang of quickly, or was that a bit of a learning curve for you?
No, I think that I got the hang of it really quickly, and I'll tell you why. In I worked in the service industry for about 7 years. Whenever I was like in high school and going into college, I worked at like a resort, and I was a chef, and I was a server, and I was a bartender, and I worked banquets, and I worked maintenance, and I did all these different things around basically like a hotel, restaurant, resort, and that taught me a lot about the service industry. So I had it in mind what that was. I had even applied to be the food and beverage manager there, and didn't get the job, and I shouldn't have. I was a kid, but that was the level of interest that I had as far as leading. And then I had done, it's probably like 15 years of service with a youth group that I got involved in when I was in high school, and that was all about leading people. In the beginning, maybe not so much, but as I got older, it was very much about leading. So leading people and guiding people was sort of something that came naturally. And then, probably the first 2 or 3 years of plumbing, I was kind of back down to the bottom, and it was hard work. And you were the guy who was, literally in the trenches, digging trenches, jackhammering concrete. It was hard work. It was awesome. And but then eventually I got my own crew, and I would run jobs. And so, I was leading people, and I was delegating, and I was giving jobs, and I was forecasting and looking ahead and planning for the week. and ordering material and stuff. And in a lot of ways, it's pretty similar to the way that the cafes are. So, the only difference is that the trades are a rough and tough, kind of gruff. I didn't mean to rhyme all three of those words, but it's a rough industry, and you can be it's very a lot of men. You could be very just kind of mean. A lot of people were mean, and you could just say it how it is. But in the cafes and with a lot of the employees, it was a different dynamic. So I had to learn to sort of calm down a little bit, and I didn't like that environment anyways, of always being angry and always yelling and always getting yelled at. So I sort of wanted to create a better environment, but and so it was cool. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I naturally fell into it, but my goodness, I'm learning every single day, because as soon as I think I have it figured out as far as leading people, you learn that you still have so much to learn.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like from your service experience and then with the trades, you got a exposure to a variety of different contexts in which you could exercise leadership and communication. And then, I almost wager that if you hadn't had the experience with or a youth group or with, the service industry, that you wouldn't have been so quick to give up the idea of how you communicate through the trades, which, I also know is very rough. And of course, that's not going to go over well with a predominantly a younger crowd in the coffee industry, and more diverse in general. So, how did you get into your first store? How did that come about? Was that something that was just presented to you by somebody who knew you from the farmer's market or buying your coffee? What was the story behind getting that first brick and mortar?
Absolutely. Well, I think that what started to happen is that we were going to these farmers markets, and we would do big festivals, and we'd go to downtown Cleveland and do stuff down there. And people would come up to us and they would look at our name and they would look at what we were doing. And they were like, Heartwood, how come I've never heard of you guys? And we're like, I don't know. We've been, doing it for 3 years, and we're from Cleveland and we're local, and this is awesome. And, in the meantime, a couple shops in Cleveland started to open up that were doing specialty coffee. A couple more like second wave focused shops started to kind of convert to a little bit more specialty focus. And, coffee was starting to become a thing in the area. And I was getting mad. I'm like, I've been working my butt off, and you haven't heard of us? And not to think that everybody should have heard of us, but, but it's just like these other places have started up, and they started after we did, and I kind of started to realize that the reason people knew who they were is because they had a store. They had a physical presence. People were able to go there and experience it on a larger scale than a farmer's market, and then share and talk about it. So it kind of occurred to me that, if we're going to take this serious, if this is really a business, it's probably not going to be the Instagram business that we think it was going to be. And maybe it could have been if we worked harder on that. But it just seemed like, hey, if we open a store, it'll give us some credibility. Like, we're a real business. We're not, Jim roasting coffee in his garage. We're Heartwood, and we're the real deal. And because we have a store, again, gives us credibility. And we really wanted to get into some more wholesale, some restaurants and that kind of business in the area. And it was hard to walk into a place because people are like, who are you? And so we really said, let's open a store to legitimize our business, and that'll help our wholesale business grow. And because really roasting was the focus, we source great coffee, we roast great coffee, we ship great coffee, and that was it. Let's use the store as a way to help kind of promote that arm of our business. So we started to look, and wow, what a process. It's, and even going back to talking about the trades real quick, I often say that, man, if I knew I was going to do this, I would have done it when I was 18. I wouldn't have worried about college and plumbing and all the other things that I did. But wow, how all those things perfectly prepared me for this journey that I was about to take, and how useful all those things, and we could talk more about that later, but how useful all these things have become. So I was real familiar with commercial construction. So I could walk into an empty space that was for lease and get a really, really good idea of what it would take to turn it into a coffee shop. There were coffee shops in the Cleveland area that I had done the plumbing for. I ran the job. So I'm like, oh wow, like I actually have done this before. I've never worked in a coffee shop, but from a mechanical standpoint, I understand how it works. And so we were going downtown Cleveland. We thought that would be the best. And you look at one place and then you look at another and then you go, you get so excited. And then you say, oh, like, where's that $150,000 going to come from to build out that cafe, And then you have this like wake up moment and then you have to walk away and then you go check out a new opportunity. And then a big business will say, hey, how about if you open a store like in our store? And we're like, oh, that's amazing. And you get so amped. And then you kind of realize, this isn't the right fit for us, or we don't have the money. And what's so funny is there's probably 6 or 7 or 8, no exaggeration, spaces that we went and looked at for a shop that we weren't able to pull the trigger on that eventually became coffee shops. And I said to myself, I'm like, dang, I must be pretty good at this, because if somebody else thought it was a good idea and I was there, then I'm on the right track. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm just saying that it was kind of ironic, but it gave me confidence that we were heading in the right direction. And we said no, and almost even took on an investment, which thank God we never did. And we found a coffee shop in Hudson, Ohio that was closing. And the lady who ran it was moving to Chicago and she was just trying to get out of it. And we knew the neighbor who was next door, and she told us about it. We came down and looked at it, and we ended up basically buying the business essentially from her. We bought all the assets and the space for like nothing, and which was really convenient because we didn't have anything. So, I mean, we paid $14,000 for basically a fully furnished coffee shop with espresso machines and almost everything we needed. And me and my partner at the time split that, and I had to borrow the money. I didn't even have the money to do it. And we did all the work ourselves, and we did a extreme like aesthetic makeover. We upgraded some of the equipment, and before you know it, we basically opened our first we cash flowed all the expenses that we needed as far as construction and all the things associated with opening up a shop. And we essentially opened up a shop in a perfect neighborhood, by the way, that we hadn't even considered. And we did it for like less than 20 grand, which is, I think, like spectacular.
That's crazy. So
it wasn't perfect, but it got us off the ground.
Well, I mean, did you run the job to get that thing updated? And like, were you the GC in getting that thing to your standard?
Well, I was the GC, I was the plumber, I was the electrician, I was the drywall guy, I was the tile guy.
Yeah.
We built all the furniture, we built all the cabinets. My wife and I and my partner and his wife were in there painting and hanging light fixtures, and I poured all the concrete countertops. I poured, literally built the shop ourselves. We didn't hire out a single thing. The only thing that we hired out was for a guy to make a sign for the front of the building because we didn't know how to print a big sign. And everything else, from going to the city and getting permits and zoning and all that stuff, A to Z, we did everything ourselves.
Now, you are going to need to staff this place.
Yep.
And you have a farmer's market that's running on Saturday.
Yep.
And so there's a bit of a gap between, hiring and actually getting people on the payroll. What did it look like, first of all, for you to go about doing that and getting a solid staff? And second of all, what would you consider a solid staff? Like, what standards do you have for service? Obviously, you've developed coffee standards over the years, but people standards are sometimes a little bit different. So talk a little bit about your people and how you went about those things.
Yeah. Scary. Wow. oh, we have to hire people that are going to be working for us. We're going to have a payroll. Like, are you like we haven't even paid ourselves yet? What are you talking about? Um, so the build out probably took us 4 months, and in that time, we drummed up a little bit of interest, and we were able to we hung some papers on a wall, and it was a location that was really tucked back. It was off the beaten path. We hung some flyers on the door saying, hey, we're a coffee shop and we're gonna need you to come work here. And we hired 4 people, and and uh and I really don't know how they found out about us. It must have just been the buzz, and I don't know how we knew that they would be the right people. But I remember we did the training, and after the training, we actually like told one of them, "Hey, like we can't have you come work here." And it wasn't because they weren't qualified. Well, they probably weren't qualified, but it wasn't because they weren't great. It was because we freaked out, and we're like, we're gonna have to pay all these people, like we cut payroll before we even opened on the first day. But I think the secret there is, if you're gonna open a place like this, I think that the owner has to be there. Now, that might not be true in every application. So not like I know 100%, but in my experience with me and my business partner at the time, we worked a lot of the hours. He was a photographer, so he would work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then I think Thursday we got to a point where we could have the staff that we hired run it. And then I was taking off Friday. I used all my vacation for on Fridays, basically, for as long as I could. And I would work Friday, Saturday. And I think being there, being present, like helping people understand this is who we are and this is what we're doing. There's no better way, I think, of training people than to have them watch you do it. So they see you treat a customer a certain way. They say, oh, that's how we treat customers. They see you doing a pour over. It's like, yeah, I taught you in training how to do a pour over, but seeing somebody do it and I don't know, maybe just seeing the owner do it gives people some confidence, because if you're an employee and you come into a new business, you have no idea what to say or what to do or how to represent this business that you work for. And there's some comfort there. The other thing I will say is that customers loved that we were there, like behind bar. They got to know who we were, and this is a local place. This is people who care enough that they're actually here working too. So that obviously wasn't scalable. I wasn't going to be able to work behind the bar for the rest of my life. But as far as starting up a store, I think it was a big key to success there.
Absolutely. Yeah. We talk about present leadership here a lot, and that's exactly what I think everybody should do. Not perpetually, obviously, at a certain point. Sure. You don't want to have to be, unless you absolutely want to, and that's your lifestyle and you love it. Mm-hmm. But that is really great. And so then you have your starting crew of people, and as you sort of watch it happen, and watch the culture form as people interact with you, I imagine you are sort of getting better at communicating to the people that you hire what it is they need to do, what the culture is and the training process. I mean, were you in a position to sort of refine that pretty soon and get kind of better at it as you went along, so that it didn't depend on your personality so much, but it started to be something that could be hired, and you could be there as you wanted to, but others were trained well enough and selected well enough that they could take it on?
There's like a serendipitous sort of like response, I guess, I have to this, if that even makes sense. But the answer is yes. And the reason is because I had no choice. And I'll try to explain myself the best that I can. So, 6 months after we opened that shop, my business partner moved across the country and he was gone. And when he did that, that left me in a little bit of a bind, because I could basically at that point now only work Saturdays, which meant that 5 days a week, the shop was going to run without any kind of owner presence at all.
Wow. Yeah.
And so it was kind of a scary time. And And when that happened, I literally, yeah, like I said, I had no choice. I had to trust the people who were there. Now, I don't know how this worked out, but our staff was unbelievable. The quality of the character of the people who came to work at Heartwood in that first 6 months, and really the first like year and a half, I would say, for that first location, were some of the most beautiful, spectacular people that I've ever met in my entire life. And they literally launched that shop almost entirely without me because I was still working a full-time job. And so it forced me to not be, it forced me to trust people, which I think that's a really hard thing to give away some of the control, you know. And when they did see me, they knew what my goal was and they knew my intention, and we got along really, really well. And I was able to communicate very easily with everybody who worked there. And you know, they have a problem, they call me and I would answer always. It didn't matter. I said, if you guys call, I will answer always. And I'm bad at answering the phone, but if you guys call, I'm going to answer. And then they knew that they were going to close the shop at 5, and then I was going to show up at probably 7 after I got off and do whatever I had to do. And the people who opened the next day, they knew that I was there sort of prepping the shop and getting it ready for service the next day. And if we were out of something, you know, going out there. So yeah, you know, if I would have gone full time at that point and I would have been working 6 days a week, maybe it wouldn't have done as good as it has. But because we had such great people, some of them, by the way, who still work for us, and this is 4 years down the line, that shop, you know, Heartwood in general, I question as to whether or not it would actually be here and be as strong. It really taught me to trust people. I think people come to work, they want to help, and they want to, I don't want to say they want to be left alone. They want to be trusted. And by default, I had to let them go. And thank God they did an awesome job. I remember doing reviews at the end of that year and almost coming to tears saying like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Wow. You guys did it, you know? And so, it was pretty cool.
Pretty cool indeed. Yeah. Sounds a bit of an understatement. So you have this fantastic crew and you're still working, you know, your job in plumbing, and then you have a second store that opens up. And it doesn't seem like it's that far, you know, between the first one opening and the second one opening. Right. What precipitated that, and was that easier to do than the first one?
So I could tell you what precipitated it. I don't know if I could tell you if it was easier. It was kind of a blur, and I'll tell you why. So, you know, December of 2017 comes, my business partner's out. January of 2018 comes, and I drive by a space that's for lease in a town that I've loved my entire life. That my mom used to work down there. It's a beautiful New England sort of town, and honestly, really pretty similar to Hudson. So this one is in Sugar and Falls, and I stopped and I looked at it and it was for lease, and I was like, I just have to know, because you know, your entrepreneur mind, you kind of are already thinking about a second shop anyways, even though it's only been 6 months. You're like, what's next? What's next? And I ran up the stairs to the leasing office. I was like, hey, do you guys own this, you know, this spot? And I was like so pumped about it. And I eventually went and saw it. And I was just thinking that, I really want to be in this town. Heartwood is a perfect fit for Sugar and Falls. And if we don't do it, somebody else is going to, because I can't believe that there's nobody here now. And then 2, I felt like if the first shop for whatever reason would fail, I'd be out of business. It would be hard to shut down a shop, let's just say, if it failed, and go back to just like roasting mail order, or even taking the risk to jump into another store. And so I said, I kind of want to open a second store as a little bit of a safety net, that should something happen and one has to close, I'm still in business. So that was what precipitated. That was the motivation. And I saw that it was working. I saw that this is something that I want to do. Like I was attracted to it and I wanted to be there all the time and I loved it. I loved the community. I loved interacting with customers. Like there was, we had regulars, it's crazy to think when you're the person who's building it that like, wow, we made a shop where there's regulars, it was so awesome. I was so inspired by it that I just wanted to keep doing it. So that was that. And was it easier was the other part of your question. So at this point, I'm still working 50 to 60 hours a week plumbing. I'm trying to run a coffee shop, down in Hudson. I'm working doubles on Saturdays, roasting still at this point, I believe, in my garage. So all the coffee that we're selling online and in the stores, I'm still roasting all of that. And by the way, I've got 4 kids and a wife. And of course, we're building a second store. And of course, I wasn't going to hire anybody to do it. We were going to do it all ourselves again. And so, it must have been around this time that I finally hired, somebody to roast coffee. And to this day, he's our director of coffee. He's our lead roaster. His name is Nick Wise. He's unbelievable. He had kids and he came to work for a company where he was driving to my house and roasting coffee in my garage. He's one of the biggest parts of Heartwood. And so, I finally was able to, hand off some of that. And this is a guy, how many people in a market that doesn't have a specialty coffee scene, have roasting experience and are looking for a job, zero, I would think, It's so, how do you hire a roaster? And this guy had all those things and he had worked in cafes his whole life and he really brought a lot to the table and, even started his own business at one point selling coffee. And so it's like, he came and worked for us. I had so many things going on. And I think that was finally about my tipping point. So it was easier because it was a snowball and it was turning into an avalanche and it was still kind of controlled, but I knew that if I didn't do something soon, we were going to crash, or I was going to crash at least. And so we got the Chagrin store built. It was awesome. And on our opening day was the day that I finally, left my plumbing career and went, full time with Heartwood.
Okay. So assuming that this is a long time coming for you and the build up of well, I'm going to do this and this is going to be the best for me. It's going to be the best for my family, and the business and all of that is what's in your mind. When you made the transition and you said, okay, put the 2 weeks or however long in to the plumbing job, and then it was a reality, did it match up with what you thought was going to happen?
No way. Not even close. When you're doing this, and by this point, right, I had been doing it for 4+ years, from the time I bought the roaster to the time we're talking about right now. It was, that's a long 4 years. That's a long time. And so you think about that. Okay, this is going to be my thing. Is it going to be my thing? I think it's going to be my thing. This is going to be my full time. This is going to be my career. This is what I'm going to transfer into. What do I need to do to make that happen? And again, I had a lot of people relying on me at home. And so how do I responsibly do that? So everybody says, okay, cool. You got to put 6 months of expenses aside and you have to do X, Y, Z. And you have to basically make sure that the income that you have coming in from the business that you're paying yourself, at least makes up for what your current salary is at your job. And that that if you go full time on this, that you'll be able to make more than what you're making at your real job now. Those are all kind of a basic pathway for somebody who's trying to transition. And I knew that, and I was, I guess, trying to do that, but every bit of money that I saved was going back into the company, and I still wasn't getting paid anything out of the company, but so it didn't go the way that I thought it was going to go at all. I had no intention really of leaving my job at that point. I thought I'd still work for another year or two. But like I mentioned, I was doing too much. I couldn't take it anymore. When we opened Chagrin, I wanted to be there and be owner present, because I knew that that was going to work. But I also wanted to open early and stay open late. And I was working like 100 hours or something like that on bar. It's not a sustainable life. When I finally left my job, it was because I had to, and I had to show everybody in the company that, hey, I'm taking this is serious. Like, I think me still having another job almost kind of said that this isn't real, or I'm not really serious, or this isn't working, or, hey, if we were making a lot of money, then I would be working here instead of my main job, So I got the feeling that even though I had a spectacular staff that really understood where I was at, it was sending a goofy message to not even be full-time myself and asking other people to be full-time. And so it just was time. It was time. And I knew that we could make it work. And I had such high hopes for this new store. And so I kind of gambled, and I went for it. And I was able to sort of like, I had a little bit of runway with the savings that I had. And by the time that ran out, the second store was doing pretty well, and I was finally able to make a little bit of money. So
wow, oh, finally,
yeah.
Well, it feels like such a long journey just in the last 45 minutes here. So you now are full time at the shop, and this is also a time where I'm sure you're thinking about how you're going to iterate your business and some of the ways that you can increase the quality of what you're doing in the store. Now that you're there full time, you've got one focus. Mm-hmm. Did you take this as an opportunity to create a level up in any area of the business related to quality or operations?
100%. Yeah, you nailed it on the head. And in fact, that was a big thing when I mentioned talking where I had reviews with my staff. A lot of it was like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then the next part was, I'm going to spend the next year fixing everything that didn't get done properly over the last year because I wasn't 100% focused here. And everybody knew that there were problems, and they weren't like huge problems, but they were problems, right? They were just things that we needed to make better. And so I said, I'm committing the next year to not doing anything crazy, and instead focusing on all the small things about our business that, we did whatever we had to do to get by, but now I'm going to be more intentional about it. And I'm going to take what we learned over the last year and use that as sort of the knowledge base for making policies and having big consistency, And now with two shops, that became a really big deal because, the two shops have their own identity, and that's awesome because they're two different communities. But I still wanted it to feel like a Heartwood, no matter where you went. And more importantly, I wanted you to go from one store to the other and get your drink and have it taste exactly the same in each shop. Consistency was so, so, so important to me. And then even more so, I hated the notion that a customer might come into our store and only get a particular drink if a particular barista was working.
Oh, yeah.
And that is, man, it makes me shudder. Like, look, we're going to have people who are better baristas than others, and that's just a fact. But we should all strive for a certain level of standards, a certain level of excellence. And so that no matter if you have a new barista in one shop, your drink's going to taste the same as if you had the best barista in another shop. And if you're a cappuccino person, you should get a cappuccino when you come in. Your order shouldn't be determined by, who's behind the bar. And I had noticed that in other stores. I had noticed that myself because, at this time I'm going to tons of coffee shops and just learning about the experience myself. And I found myself doing that. Like, oh man, this guy doesn't really steam milk very well, so I'm just going to go with a drip coffee today,
Yeah.
And I was like, what a bummer. And I'm like, no, I'm not going through all this trouble to not care about the details of the shop. And and I feel like that about a lot of things. If you're going to open a pizza shop, like, you better be the best at pizza. Like, you should really have something to bring to the table. You should really care about your ingredients. You should really care about your customer service, like, to like almost a crazy degree, because that's what you signed up to do. Like, if you're not going to bring something great to the community, then I don't know that you should do it. And so that holds me accountable. If I'm going to bring something to the community, I want it to be really well thought out, really polished, held to a high standard, and communicating that to, several people who are now employees of Heartwood. Yeah, that's a whole challenge in and of itself. But I don't know.
Yeah.
That's what
Well, it's a challenge for sure. I mean, when you have that kind of passion towards operational excellence with, standards in service and all of this stuff, it's easy to be like, all right, there's a new sheriff and it's me.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna apply all of these things. We're gonna fix all these problems. I mean, how did you, I don't know, like, did that go over well? How did you do it in a way that wasn't overwhelming, but actually served the business and the people in the process of, the pursuit of higher standards?
Sure. I think that I was very openly communicative with everybody in the staff, how much I appreciated who they are and what they brought to the table. And that, I was beginning to realize that, it used to be, Jim Sanders in his garage roasting coffee, and that was me building the business. But over time, it has become each of us who have a really important part in building this business. And if you're going to be here, I want you to sort of, have that sort of sense that I'm doing something special and that what I'm doing matters. And I think by developing that kind of culture, I was able to just ask a lot of questions. Hey, what is terrible about, preparing food here? And people would just tell me, like, they were very, very honest about what they liked and what they didn't like, and or what was functional and what was not functional, or what was good workflow and what was bad workflow. And for me, I'm like, cool, that's just a problem that I have to solve. And if I solve it, that's generally going to be better for everybody. The other side of it is that I've found that most people want to do what's best for the group, at least in Heartwood, and so they almost, in a sense, want to be told what is the process that you expect, because I want to do what's best for Heartwood. I want to do what's best for everybody. And I also buy into the fact that consistency is really important, and the quality of our drinks are really important. Or I think they say, oh my gosh, you guys do so much work in the roastery to source excellent coffees and then roast them. And the whole thing to get them here, I have a responsibility to do it well. So help me understand how to do it well. So, coming up with processes is less about saying this is how you have to do it, and more about saying this is your path to success. And I've noticed with our employees, at least, that they're very much about the benefit of the group and less about their own opinions. Now, don't get me wrong, everybody's got opinions.
Sure.
But yeah, I've got a group, not that I have a group, but Heartwood, as a group, we're just people who care about succeeding together. It makes it easy to make policies because everybody can just sort of nod their head and say, yeah, obviously that's something that needed to be addressed, and I'm glad that I know how to do it right now.
That's a great way to look at it, and I'm glad that that's your perspective, to reframe it as a positive, instead of saying like, well, here's what I don't want you to do, or this is how not to screw up here at this job, and to create a pathway to success through implementing specific pathways and policies is absolutely the way to go. So as we wrap up here, I have a kind of a final question, and
Sure.
It is around the subject of the future. What do you want to see in the next few years from your business? And all of this has been happening. All of this development of your business has been happening in an area of the country that's not typically known for high quality coffee. And or it's not a coastal city. It's not hipster central. You opened in Chagrin Falls, which doesn't sound like hipster central
Right.
from the way you described it, and yet you're experiencing a lot of success in quality standards that would be successful in like Los Angeles or New York City and things like that. So as you look to the future of your business, I would like to hear what you have in mind, but also I want to see if you could offer some encouragement and advice to people who are in similar places, who want to do excellent work in a context where it might not seem obvious, but maybe it's waiting for it to happen.
That's a heavy question, but it's stuff that we think about all the time. And at Heartwood, we came up with this tagline or this hashtag that says grow together. And it was just kind of a way that we said, Heartwood is like the center of a tree, and grow together sort of had this sort of metaphor for like a tree. And I said, I want our cafes to sort of be like a tree where, where like we gather important things from the ground, like the roots, and we deliver it, to our customers, or kind of like the leaves, and together we bloom this like beautiful forest or whatever. Kind of corny, but the idea just became like, I realized that our mission now is to grow together. And so what does that mean? That means that it's only good for me if it's also good for Heartwood's employees. It's only good for our employees if it's good for me. It's only good for Heartwood if it's good for our vendors. And we're not going to engage with a vendor that maybe draws too much for us, or that also doesn't grow by us being a customer of theirs, and so we take that to working with importers and working with eventually, hopefully, working with farmers, and literally every interaction that we have from us to customers, like every interaction, both parties should grow together through that interaction. And so when I think about growth for the company, I want to grow. And you talk about the Midwest and you talk about Ohio, and you say Ohio and what coffee company comes to mind? It's, unless you're from here, it's kind of hard to think about who that is. Like, could you come up with one? And really every single like surrounding state, maybe except for Michigan, it'd be hard. And I guess Pennsylvania, if you go to like Philadelphia, but it's hard to identify, sort of like a Midwest or Ohio, coffee company. And I would love for Heartwood to be that, because I think that the people that are here and the quality of the product and the coffee and just like what we represent from a hardworking standpoint and stuff is something that I really want to share with a lot of people. And I really would love to get the word out. And when people say Ohio, I want them to say Heartwood. And, I had mentioned that we opened the cafes as a way to grow wholesale. Well, we opened the cafes and wholesale kind of went on hold because there was nobody available to do it. And all of a sudden the cafes grew, and we're like, wow, this is awesome. Like, and I would personally love to open more cafes. And then last year we hired somebody who's our director of growth, who's really trying to grow a lot of our wholesale. And so can we get that? And he's from California. It's really funny because he says, wow, in California, this would be so easy, but here people are still learning. And so we feel like we're on the cusp. Like we're going to be around, and we're going to be ready for anybody who wants to serve Heartwood or be a partner with us when their industry gets around to it, And so, and then I brought up the whole grow together thing, really to also say that, if we grow, we're going to have to hire more people, or it's going to be a more workload or a different focus for the people that already work here. And so that's fine if everybody's on board. I never want to come in and say, okay, guys, our growth plan is to open 10 cafes in the next 5 years. And, I'm going to put a team together and this is what we're going to do. Well, if those people aren't inspired by that type of work, I just don't think it's going to be fun. And I don't think that I want to be a part of it. And sure, could we get it done? Yeah, we could definitely get it done. And could it be successful financially? More than likely. Maybe not, but I would hope so, But as a team, I want us to be really just energized by our work, because that's the whole reason I left plumbing, or I left a long list of jobs that I really didn't feel inspired or motivated by. But I plan on doing this for the rest of my life. So if I'm going to do that, it'd be really cool if I could have a good time doing it, and the people around me, are also really enjoying it. And right now we're having a blast, and we're talking about growing. And if you're out there and you're trying to get through a tough time, the last 2 years obviously have been pretty rough, or you're looking for some motivation, my advice is just surround yourself around good people, believe in yourself, and just keep going. I think that last year we never shut down. We never laid off a single person. And I think that was a key to the reason why we're still strong today. There's a lot of keys, and I could talk for another hour just about last year, but I think that if you keep going and you keep believing in it, it took us, 3.5 years to open a shop. We've been doing this now for 7 or 8 years. There's tech companies that started after we started and have sold for billions of dollars since then,
Right.
and so that's okay. We're on our own trajectory, and we're going to keep moving, and we're going to keep doing what inspires us. And I don't know. I think that might be a key to work happiness, is to, if you believe in it, just keep doing it. Don't be pressured by other people's expectations of you. And if you believe it's going to work, don't stop.
Wow. I love your story. And I really, you've delivered a lot of keys here, appropriately enough. And it is really good to get to know about Heartwood. And I love the values that you have, and the success that you're experiencing, obviously, is hard fought for. And I love that it's a success for your employees as much as it is for you. So thank you, Jim, for being on the show today and talking with us on this Founder Friday. How can we get to be in touch with you and learn more about Heartwood?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Our website is www.heartwoodcoffee.com. You can find us on Instagram at Heartwood Coffee. Like I mentioned, we're trying to grow wholesale. If you're a place that's looking for wholesale, there's 1,000 coffee companies out there, but I think we could give you a fair shake. You can email us at wholesale@heartwoodcoffee.com. And, my name's Jim Sanders. My email is jim@heartwoodcoffee.com. I would love to even talk to any aspiring, owners and stuff. And we're young, and I don't claim any sort of success or anything yet, but I love what I do every day, and I'm supporting a family doing it. And if I could answer any questions or help, talk to anybody else through it, that'd be awesome.
Well, we've loved having you on the show, Jim. Thank you again.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Okay, everybody. Well, I hope that this episode was helpful and encouraging to you. I've referenced Jim's story so many times since having this conversation with him, mainly with the context of, here's somebody who had a vision, who had these values to want to bring something to the community, and did it, even though it was small at first, did it consistently, exhibiting those values right from the beginning. And I'm so glad that we got the opportunity to hear Jim's story here at Keys to the Shop. So huge thank you to Jim for joining us on the show. Of course, if you want more information about Heartwood Coffee Roasters, you can go to their website, heartwoodroastery.com, and also follow them on Instagram over at Heartwood Coffee. Now, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback about today's episode or any other episode of Keys to the Shop, feel free to email me, chris@keystotheshop.com. And if you're interested in Keys to the Shop consulting, then let's have a conversation. You can reach out to me at that same email address, chris@keystotheshop.com. And with that, that's the end of our show today. Thanks everyone for joining me on this November's Founder Friday. I really am thankful for all of you. I hope you all had an amazing Thanksgiving. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.